Welcome back to another edition of Light Beer, Dark Money. My name is Chris Clements, and this next to me is not Sean Noble. This is Jay Feely, congressional candidate, former media superstar, place kicker to the stars. Thank you for being here.
It's been a fun ride. It's 25 years basically in the NFL, playing and then broadcasting.
How many teams were you with? You were
6.
You were with 6 teams.
Yeah. It was like 4 years, 2 years, 1 year, 2 years.
You
4
were journeyman.
Years. Well, I was a survivalist. You get into the NFL, and I didn't get in right away. I worked as a financial advisor for 2 years after college, and wasn't invited to training camp. So was continuing that grind of going to tryouts and trying to get in and get my foot in the door, and it was at the point where I was almost ready to quit. Like at some point, you got to be honest with yourself. Like it's not happening. And I was doing well as a financial advisor, opened my own office in Tampa and went to one last tryout. And it was like God said, okay, now I'm going to open the doors and open them so wide that you have to know that I was the one who did it. And had a few different offers and went to Atlanta as a camp guy, got $0 to sign and went in there and beat out Jake Arians, Bruce Arians' son.
Oh, my goodness.
Who later was my head coach here with the Cardinals.
Yeah, I was just going to say. that came back to haunt you a little bit.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's so great that you're here because we can actually talk sports a little bit before we talk politics.
Sean doesn't like talking sports with you?
Well, Sean likes talking sports. Let's be honest. And right now we are licking our wounds from that beatdown from the Philadelphia Phillies last night because we're both diehard in-the-wool Dodger fans.
Well, hopefully my Michigan Wolverines can do it again in L.A.
Well,
this
and
weekend.
I wore a shirt. I don't think our viewers can really see it. It's right there. Yes, of course.
You had to go deep in the closet to get that, didn't you?
Yeah, I buy one like every other week. So my wife really hates football season because all this new swag shows up.
Right, no, I'm the same way.
And now that every single company on the face of the planet is selling college gear or collegiate,
they all look
whatever.
good too.
When you great. Get we never had this when we were at school.
Definitely,
it was this kind of a ratty shirt and a ratty T-shirt. Now it's Lululemon T-shirts and Johnny O, golf shirts and whatever, and I think this is Peter Millar or whatever the heck it is. So, but yes, we have a rivalry game this weekend, and it is a storied rivalry because of years and years going to the Rose Bowl. It was USC Michigan for a lot of it.
Well, and that's what makes it so special is that you would only meet in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
and so those games held so much meaning. We got our freshman quarterback going on the road out to L.A., and we'll see how he handles that. And it's been a journey for him so far. Didn't play well against Oklahoma, but has had a couple good games. So we'll see where we're at. And hopefully for my Michigan Wolverines, we can handle you in the trenches. If we win in the trenches, I think we'll win that game.
Well, that's been a problem for the USC Trojans is the trenches and getting pushed around and kind of manhandled like Illinois did almost 2 weeks ago, and took them by surprise a little bit. I mean, SC – Lincoln Riley, it's all finesse, right? It's all finesse.
You saw it when Michigan played Washington in the national championship. Like we came out and we just ran the ball down their throat and hit big runs. And when we broke off the 2 big runs in that game, I knew, okay, we're going to win this game.
Well, and your defense is formidable this year, absolutely formidable, especially your rushing defense. And we've been running the ball surprisingly well. Even against Illinois, we were running the ball well. We executed well. We turned over the ball a couple times, and our defense came up with some stops. But at the end of the day, we made some coaching mistakes.
That'll be what decides the game. The team that can run the ball better will win that game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fun. I mean, it's sold out at the Coliseum. Your coach made a little dig at SC fans the other day by saying, well, it's sold out because Michigan is coming to the Coliseum.
Michigan
he's not wrong.
Well. Yeah, that's right.
He's not wrong.
It's a loyal fan base, that's for sure.
Our listeners and viewers will know that I am not tremendously a Lincoln Riley fan by any stretch of the imagination. It has to do with this idea of becoming a true head coach and being out there with the boosters and the supporters and recruiting well, and he's finally getting a handle on the recruiting piece for the 2026 class. But being that total head coach, I think is a difficult thing, especially the way college football has changed now.
I don't envy head coaches now.
Yeah.
Because the job that they have is so much harder than it was 15, 20 years ago when I was in college. You have to re-recruit your players basically every day.
Yeah.
And then the whole NIL and what they're getting paid and those negotiations and those conversations. It is not fun. If a guy doesn't like his play time, he doesn't like his NIL deal, in the middle of the season, he may decide, that's it, I'm out of here. It's so narcissistic, college football is now, and college sports, that it's sad because for me, like when we won the national championship at Michigan, all those guys stayed 3-4 years. We had so many seniors on that team, and you don't see that now. You don't see guys that are committed to their school that want to go and stay 3-4 years to win for their program, for their school, because everything's so narcissistic.
Yeah, how do we fix it?
I think you have to have a salary cap, and everybody in that conference has to have the same amount of money that they determine how they allocate. And if you have that, then there's a baseline level and you'll see like who does the best allocating that money, similar to you see in the NFL. But to have a salary cap, you have to have a CBA.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big hindrance, because to get all these college players from all these different schools to vote for that and to restrict themselves, because CBAs do restrict you in some ways, but the system right now is unsustainable. You
it's
can't
a free-for-all.
Yeah, you can't sustain it. Guys can leave at any time. They can transfer at any time, and it's just not conducive to enjoying it as a fan. And I don't think it's the best environment for the players, and it's certainly not the best environment for the coaches in a program.
Yeah, I used to think that the NIL was actually going to be the undoing of college sports, but I've come around to this idea that really it's the transfer portal. The transfer portal was supposed to be
the
one
combination of the two.
The combination of the two, but the transfer portal really was supposed to be one and done. And then extraneous circumstances, your coach gets fired or whatever, and then you can transfer. And now it's a free-for-all, and you can't build a team off of that. You can't build an environment. You can't build a culture.
No, here at ASU, when Jaden Daniels left, my son was on that team. As soon as Jaden Daniels left, it was open season on the rest of the players on that roster, and they lost 12 starters in the next week, and all of a sudden your entire team is gone. You can't win.
Yeah. Well, ASU seems to be doing pretty well now.
Kenny's done a great job. Yeah, I'm really impressed with the job he has done. And they're one of the few teams, I think Michigan has it too, where there is a belief in the program and winning for the program, and they have done a great job of creating that environment and that atmosphere on that team where guys, I think, from the outside looking at it, they are unselfish. They do believe in the program. They do believe in, what they're trying to establish there. And, they've established a winning culture, and hopefully they can continue that.
Well, and Kenny is out there doing the other extraneous things that I would argue that Lincoln has some issues with. He's meeting with the press. He's promoting the program. He's out there, he's out there with the students, and he's become iconic within the community, which is great.
So I never understood why college coaches didn't embrace TV networks more, because for 3 hours, I'm your biggest advocate. I am doing a commercial for you. If you do a great job of convincing me, here's who we are, this is what we're trying to build, this is the way we're going to do it. If I believe in that and I'm a broadcaster on air, I'm going to talk about it for 3 hours. But so many college coaches, more so than the NFL, had this ego about them and pushed the broadcasters and the teams away. And I would just kind of chuckle to myself, like, now I'm going to go on air, I'm going to be pretty critical about you, honest about you, because you didn't do a great job of kind of creating for me the narrative of what you wanted me to sell on TV.
That's a great point. And so much so because college football media has become this other juggernaut, it just, with what you saw even this year with the retirement of Coach Corso from College Game Day and the notoriety around that and the commonality around that. Everybody kind of celebrated him as this other entity of everything they enjoy about their Saturday morning.
Well, harken back to it, kind of a simpler time in college football, right?
Yeah. I mean, I woke up that morning and I shed a tear or two, upon his retirement, because it's the end of an era.
That was a pretty good run, though.
It was a great run, and College Game Day is going to have some, I think some issues just moving forward without that sort of pageantry that he represented, and it's very much more a competitive environment with everything that we're seing.
Yeah, so many networks doing it for sure.
But you were in that for a number of years. Tell us a little bit about your broadcasting career, what that was like. How you fell into that after retiring from the NFL.
It happened really quick. CBS asked me if I was interested in calling games. I'd never really thought about calling games because the only other kicker to be in an NFL broadcast booth was Pat Summerall, the legendary Pat Summerall. And so I thought I would do TV. I'd done some ESPN, some First Take, and Cold Pizza before it was First Take. And different shows. And so I said, sure, I'll try a game. And they put me on BYU, Middle Tennessee State, all the Polynesian names for BYU. It was difficult. And it's so subjective. You don't know if you're good or not.
Yeah.
Like I finished a game and I didn't know if I was terrible or if I was good. And, they said, hey, if you decide not to play next year, we'll give you a season of college football and see how you do. And I said, I kind of like this idea of this new challenge. And, when you're finishing up your career, especially something that you've done for, if you include college, over 20 years, you want something that you can sink your teeth into and that's a challenge to you. And that's how I viewed broadcasting. And I wanted to be the very best. And I knew that because I was a kicker, people were going to be more critical about me.
Yeah.
So I had to do more research. I had to study more. I had to know everything about each of the teams and their philosophies and the structures around the teams and the players themselves. And, I had a great time doing it that first year, doing all college games. I got to be on at West Point and do a lot of the Army home games, which was so cool for me to get to be there, to see our cadets, to go do the coolest thing I did in 10 years of broadcasting was to go to branch night at West Point and to watch these cadets get their envelopes to tell them where they're going to go. And what really hit home to me was, these, especially the football players who all wanted to be in combat arms. And they were so excited, in tears at times, that they got to go be on the front lines and serve, and to watch them open these envelopes and see, okay, I'm in combat arms. I got what I wanted. I get to go be on the front lines. Where as a parent, I'm thinking like, you're putting your life in jeopardy for this country, but you're so joyful that you get to go do it. It's a different breed, and there's a selflessness that exists in those cadets that I just appreciated so much.
Yeah, and one of your former teammates is actually making a name for himself in broadcasting right now.
Brian Greasy?
No, that's not really who I was talking about. He happens to be actually the greatest quarterback of all time, the GOAT, Tom Brady, who nobody ever in their history of histories ever thought that this gangly, kind of out of shape kid on the Michigan Wolverines team. What was he drafted? Sixth round?
Sixth round. Yeah. Almost the 200th pick. And, I look back and I always think of him as Tommy. We were at college for 4 years together. We worked at the Michigan golf course together. We would go and work there so that we could play for free. And then the loser had to take the other guy to Olive Garden. Like that was our big bet all the time. It was free breadsticks and salad.
Bottomless salad or
that's
whatever
great.
it was. Yeah.
And then we roomed together in the summers sometimes. And, I always tell people, because they say, did you know he was going to become, what he became? And absolutely not. And his first year as a rookie, he made the team. He was fourth round, or he's the fourth quarterback on the roster on the depth chart. And I remember calling him so excited for him. I'm like, dude, you made the team. That's amazing. That's so awesome. I'm like, so happy for you. I didn't have this expectation that he would even be a starter, much less, a star and the greatest quarterback of all time. And, I think the one thing you saw was that he had the ability to lead. Mm-hmm. He had that magnetic personality. Even when he was, sixth string at Michigan, people were drawn to him. I think the same thing held true with the Patriots. And he was such a good compliment to Bill Belichick, because Bill just wanted to coach, and he wanted to be tough, and he didn't want, to be the leader. Tom was that leader, and they fit so well together. And Tom was so humble about the way in which he led that even after winning 2-3 Super Bowls, he allowed Bill to be really critical of him in front of everybody else, which set the tone for the rest of that team and, created a dynasty that lasted for 20 years.
Yeah. I think Tom also doesn't get enough credit for being the smartest guy on the field.
Oh, he won with his mind for sure.
I mean, he had a certain amount of obviously elite ability, but if you look at some of the great quarterbacks of the day, I grew up, watching Joe Montana, just the level of intelligence of being able to walk up to the line and see exactly the way the play is going to unfold before anybody else does, make the adjustments accordingly, and execute flawlessly.
Yeah, and I think it was intelligence combined with humility.
Yeah.
Because, he didn't have to throw the ball down the field to win, to feel good about himself and throw for 400 yards. If you were going to give him the check down to the running back all day long, he was going to take that and be happy with that. If they needed to check to a run and run the ball for 200 yards, that was fine too. So you had this guy that had a great head coach schematically, and a player who studied his butt off and worked as hard as he could, but had the humility that whatever the best way was to win that game, he was okay with that. and that's why they won championships.
Yeah, just incredible. And he seems to be learning the broadcast booth pretty well now too. And an owner.
Yeah, he's
of
doing
a team.
okay. He's doing all right.
He's not struggling.
No, not at all.
His old coach is struggling.
Yes, he is. I think he's fine.
Bill Belichick has
not the same, not in the NFL, and not without Tom Brady.
Yeah. This shtick that you had, I don't think it was a shtick. It's just Bill being Bill, and it doesn't quite translate to the college.
I think it's really hard, especially in today's era. Like
Yeah.
you could have done it 20 years ago, but today when you're trying to re-recruit your players on a daily basis, that's not who Bill Belichick is.
Yeah, that's certainly not. And Tom Brady, the elite talent that he is and was on the field, they were just and
they're the perfect match together.
I mean,
they complement each other unbelievable.
Bill Walsh, Joe Montana. I mean,
Yes.
those sorts of matches that you've seen throughout the history of the NFL have just been so unique and wonderful to watch. And certainly they're the GOAT. I mean, they really are that team. And now here you are in the great state of Arizona. You said your son went to ASU. I'm sure going to West Point, seeing what you saw with those cadets also was very formative in this idea of what can I do for my country? And you're running for the soon-to-be vacated seat of Andy Biggs, our good friend here of the show, running for governor and in CD5.
Thought about running for a long time.
What possessed you to ever want to run for Congress?
My wife and I, at the heart of who we are, has always been about service and utilizing the platforms that we were given, whether that was playing in the NFL or broadcasting for CBS, to have an impact on other people. And, getting into our community. She was a teacher. I was on the school board. I coached girls high school soccer. My daughter was a freshman going into high school, and they didn't have a girls team. And they, literally said, like, well, they can try out for the guys' team. I'm like, that's ridiculous. One, it's not fair. Two, it's not safe. And so we started a girls' team, and I coached it and did that for like 6 years and had a blast doing it. And we finally won a state championship. But my wife and I have always poured into our community and tried to, as much as we can, create those pathways to success for people. We did it here in Arizona with House of Refuge, which is an amazing organization in Mesa. We've done it all over the country. We did it internationally. Like, I wanted my kids to have that same desire for service, and I wanted them to have an appreciation for the benefits that this country affords them. And so I took them to Juarez, Mexico, and we built homes there. We went to Haiti a number of times. We went to Malawi, Africa, and took our family on some of these trips to try to make sure that they wanted to serve and that they knew how lucky they were to live here in the United States. That, like somebody in Haiti, they can make all the right decisions, work as hard as they can. They're not going to be a success because the economic opportunities don't exist there. And so that carries forward into why I wanted to get into politics. And, for a few years we said no. President Trump and Jim Jordan asked me to run a few years ago down at Mar-a-Lago. And,
Sure.
And it wasn't the right time. We still had 2 kids in high school, and I didn't want to think about being away from them or apart. And, everything just kind of lined up. When President Trump was shot, that was a big moment for me where I started asking myself, am I doing, God's will? And am I willing to give up enough like he is for our country? He could have walked away from politics then and said, you know what, I don't want to die, trying to be the president of this country. And he didn't. He continued to run for office and win again and then implement his vision. And that had an impact on me. So when Andy decided to not run for election and run for governor, that was the moment that I said, okay, I think my wife and I are going to really think about this, pray about it. We went to D.C. We met with everybody. There was a lot of excitement about me running for office. And we both felt that it was the right time. We were going to be empty nesters. And instead of going up to Michigan and getting away from the heat here for 4 months, we decided we'll go to D.C. and try to have an impact. And if I can't have an impact there, then I won't continue to do it. But I think we need more people in office who truly want to be civil servants, who have already been successful, who aren't going there to serve themselves and to increase their net worth. We have so many people in office that stay there for 30, 40 years. You watch their networks grow unbelievably, and they're there for self-serving reasons. That's not why I want to go there.
Well, you're running as a Republican, so I can guarantee you that you're not going to get rich in politics. Every Republican I've ever known in this state has done it the right way, and they've retired when it was time to leave to actually go take care of their family and make money. And it's always the other side that, for an inexplicable reason, retires very, very wealthy.
Well, if you believe that the government is the answer, then you have no problem going there and filling your own coffers through the government.
Yeah.
And that's who the Democrats are at their core. They believe that the government is the answer and that people should rely on the government. We should be willing to take away individual liberties and freedoms for quote unquote the greater good, but the reality is it's just regression to the mean, and they're just bringing everybody down. You're not creating, those opportunities for individuals to go out and have success. Republicans care about people. I absolutely care about people. I want to create equal opportunities and pathways to success for everyone. But I know that you can't control outcomes because you can't control behaviors. But you can control those pathways. I think that's our job, is to create those pathways and to create economic environments where everybody can succeed if they work hard. And I think that's the challenge right now for Republicans nationally. Why have we seen the rise of Mondami in New York? Because there's young people who believe that the opportunities don't exist for them. If you don't own anything, if you are part of that renter society and you don't think that home ownership is attainable and that being a success economically with your family is obtainable, and all you do is you rent, you don't have a vested interest in your society. That's our job, really, I think, as conservatives, is to create those opportunities and make sure that young people know that those pathways are there, that if you do things the right way, that the success is there, and otherwise they just default and say, okay, well, I want the government to provide for me. I think that's why you see, young people support somebody like Mondami, who believes in all these socialist policies and wants the government to own, the grocery stores, and wants the government to provide, because the young people get to the point where they say, okay, I can't do it myself. I'll allow the government to do it. And that's dangerous for our entire society.
Yeah. We can never forget that the left promotes dependency and conservatives promote opportunity.
Yes.
And that's where you're getting at. Let's do some rapid fire on some of the hot button issues of the day.
Shoot.
Give me your perspective on what's happening in Washington with this pesky little shutdown.
Well, there's no question that Democrats are the ones that have shut down the government. They're even now coming out and readily admitting it, saying it, bragging about it. Chuck Schumer was on air yesterday saying, that every day that it goes on, it gets better for us. Well, it doesn't get better for the American people. It doesn't get better for our servicemen who are going to, start losing paychecks. I got a brother in the Air Force and a brother in the Coast Guard, and in a few days, they're going to start losing paychecks. Republicans offered a clean CR, and they could have funded the government and then continued to have these discussions about subsidies and, illegals on healthcare. And, the Democrats want an additional $1.5 trillion in spending put back in that they couldn't get passed in the bill. And they want to leverage the American people to try to get that back in. I'm glad that Republicans are standing up to that.
Yeah, I hope they stand pat. And I hope we actually get to see some layoffs, which we have not seen. We were touting on this program a week ago, go Russ, go. And this week, it seems to be they've backed off of that a little bit because they're afraid of the optics.
Well, and people, I don't know if they don't talk about it, they don't realize it, but we don't even have the will to go back to pre-COVID spending. We massively inflated our spending because of COVID, under the guise of COVID, shut people's businesses down, said we're going to put everybody on government care, send out these checks. And we haven't had the will to go back to pre-COVID spending, but we have $37 trillion in debt, growing at $1 trillion every 100 days. Our interest on our debt alone is over $1 trillion a year. It's more than our defense budget, and we haven't had the will to reduce that spending. And like you said, we have to reduce spending. It's unsustainable going forward.
Yeah, and then you have our fair senators going and accosting the House Speaker yesterday, and what can only be described as a clown show. Because they're the ones who are part of the problem. They won't vote for the extension of the CR, and yet they're demanding that Adelita Grijalva be seated. And where are we with the Epstein files? Even though everyone knows that the Epstein files are about the Clintons, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone knows that. They just don't want to go there.
Well, and I think the hypocrisy is readily apparent if you look for it, because pretty much every Democrat in the past has advocated for clean resolutions and funding the government, and
this is a Biden budget.
Yes, and talked about why it's so dangerous to shut down the government, how much it hurts the American people to shut down the government, and now they're willing to do it to try to get an additional $1.5 trillion in spending.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable to me, and hopefully there's a resolution soon, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen for quite some time. And hopefully there's a little bit of pain on the other side. Let's pivot just a little bit to some better news, which is the apparent ceasefire agreement and somewhat of a capitulation of Hamas to Trump's 20-point plan. They're agreeing to release hostages by Monday. Israel has agreed to release 2,000 criminals on Monday. Is this a good deal?
It's a good deal to get the hostages home. You know, if somebody in my family had been kidnapped on October 7th, and I was in Israel about 3 months prior to that.
Sure.
And so, you know, you see it firsthand when you go and you stand on the border between Gaza and Israel, and you see, you know, the towers that they have, the sniper towers, the sniper walls that they have to have built to protect the villages from, you know, people getting killed by snipers from Gaza. You go stand on the West Bank, you go up to the Syrian border, and you see it, and you see how small Israel is as a country.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
How they are surrounded by people that want their destruction. You know, and it's sad to me to see how much support there is around our country, especially on college campuses, for Palestine and for Hamas, for these terrorists who willingly went in and killed, you know, thousands of people and took hostage hundreds of people. And so if we can get those hostages back and have them
beheaded women and children
on their own Facebook pages.
Yeah, let's be clear.
Yeah.
And my concern is that you still have people in Gaza celebrating the ceasefire, but with the idea that this is another opportunity to one day go back into Israel and kill more Jews.
You're not changing their mindset. That's what they believe. It's ingrained in their beliefs.
Yeah, it's that is my biggest concern is that what is the next steps in terms of defeating Hamas, and then the long term, what is the strategy in defeating this ideology?
Well, I do think though.
I'm speaking extemporaneously.
Yes,
I'm asking you to answer that, but
we should not get away from the fact how great a deal this would be to get the hostages home, to have peace, whether it's short-lived or not. And President Trump has used his authority and his personality to force these two people together, these two ideologies together, and hopefully we have a peace deal as a result of that.
Yeah, it seems like he's going to be going to
Jerusalem. Yeah.
Here in the next
and
day
look
or
at
two.
all the peace deals he's accomplished already in 8 months.
Yes, it's
around
tremendous.
the world. It's unbelievable.
It's tremendous. And this couldn't have happened without all the efforts they made against Iran and their proxies, too, which he was resoundingly criticized for, and yet those of us on the right were clapping.
Yes, the willingness to take those measures against Iran sends a message to everyone around the world.
Yeah, for sure.
About what we are willing to do and how we're willing to stand up against terrorists.
Yeah. So as a Congress, you get elected. It's November 2026. You win on election eve. You win the primary. You win on election eve. What do you want to accomplish in your first 100 days as a congressman? What do you hope to accomplish?
I think, obviously not.
Other than finding the bathroom.
Not having been in politics, there would be a lot to learn. And I'd be naive to not believe that there would be a lot to learn. I also believe that being idealistic is okay, and it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And that we should have hope for a better future, and we should have hope to create, not only in my district, not only in my state, but also in our country, economic pathways to success. And I think here in Arizona, when you look at the next generation, that generation's economy worldwide will be defined by who wins the AI race. And the AI race will be defined by who wins the energy race. And if you look at China right now, they have 3 terawatts trying to get to 7 terawatts. We're at 1 terawatt trying to get to 2 terawatts. We just closed down, one of our major coal plants here in Arizona because under the Biden administration, they told them they were going to close down in 2025, so they did nothing to do any of the upkeep. And so then it was unsustainable to keep it going forward. We need to be producing more energy and have a better plan, whether that's natural gas, clean coal, solar, nuclear, and the issues are with nuclear. I think that's the future, and that's where it's the cleanest, it's the most affordable, it's the most efficient, but it takes 10 years to get a nuclear plant online and billions of dollars. And if you're a businessman and you're looking at putting up a couple $1 billion up front and you don't know 4 years from now, a new administration is going to come in and change the rules and shut down your operation, I can't do that. I can't justify that. So we need to go in and have some security for businesses from the federal level to create more energy to be able to be competitive with China. And that holds true with our rare natural minerals as well. It takes 30 years for a mine to get online and processing, and then the refining and the processing, most of it's done in China. So even if we produce those rare earth minerals here that we know, we are dependent on China for, if we produce them here, we got to send them to China to get them refined and processed. Yes. So those are two of the biggest areas, I think, looking forward, because economically as well as security, we can't be reliant on China for these rare earth minerals that we need in our weapons, that we need in our chips, that we need in our economy. And then we know we're going to have to produce more energy for these data storage centers, for the AI centers. And I think looking forward, that's one of the biggest things that I would be trying to deal with. And hopefully Arizona can be on the forefront of that. And we can bring businesses. You've already seen chips begin to come here. You've seen Intel and what they did in Chandler, the massive amount of jobs that they provided. And hopefully that continues. You know, President Trump did a deal with them, and they did a new deal as well with NVIDIA, and hopefully that stabilizes them. And we continue to bring companies like that into, you know, our economy and provide the jobs and provide the security going forward for young people to understand that they can be a success here in Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just backtrack just a little bit. And so you have several months for the primary. You have
almost a year.
Almost a year.
Early August next year.
Early August. You know, you're a family living in CD5. Why should I vote for you?
I think number one, you should vote for me because I'm somebody who can communicate. And we lost one of our greatest communicators in Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
And it was heartbreaking. My wife and I had
one of the most humbling pictures is of you and your wife there at the
we were heartbroken, and it was
at the memorial.
It was the greatest evangelical event of my lifetime.
Oh, I'm sure.
To see so many of our administration get up and share their faith was unbelievable. But it was tragic at the same time. And what Charlie Kirk was so good at was going into those college campuses and talking to young people. He had the vast knowledge base to be able to make his argument, but do it respectfully and give somebody else who disagreed with him the microphone to step up, say why they did not agree with him, and then have that conversation. And I don't believe we have anybody who can stand up and can replace Charlie Kirk, but we need a lot of people to stand up and have the willingness to communicate, have the heart to care about people, and be willing to have those hard conversations. I think, being on air the last 10 years for 3 hours every Sunday has certainly prepared me for that part of the job. And then the willingness to serve. I think more than anything, we need people who are not going, as I said, to be self-serving. I could easily have just spent my 4 months of the summer when it's hot up in Michigan on our lake house. We planned that for 20 years. We built the house 20 years ago, but we didn't feel like it was the right time yet, that God was calling us to serve and to do that in D.C. And more than anything, we need people who are willing to fight, who are going to stand up for their beliefs, do it respectfully, do it with a heart of service, but willing to stand up for their beliefs and what they believe in. And I believe in the America First policies. I believe in Trump's administration right now. President Trump, the easy thing to do for him would have been to extend the tax cuts, to expand energy exploration and production, which would have brought down inflation, and to deregulate. Could have done those three things. I think he could have cruised into 2026 and really cruised through 4 years. But they knew that they weren't going to take on our massive debt. They weren't going to take on our massive trade imbalance. They weren't going to take on, we managed $22 trillion in trade into our country versus out of our country. At minus $2 trillion, Warren Buffett said it was unsustainable 20 years ago. Nobody did anything about it. President Trump and his administration are trying to change that. They've already gotten like $3 trillion in investment back into our country with deals with Qatar, with Japan, with the EU, with Canada, bringing investment back into our country, trying to fix the trade imbalance that exists, and trying to deal with our massive debt. And if we can stay above 3% GDP, we're going to be able to do that. The bill that the Republicans passed, if we stay above 3% GDP, will reduce the deficit. And I think all of those things you need fighters that have the ability to articulate why those are the right policies for this state and this country. And you need people that have the will to fight and to do it.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. Best of luck on your campaign.
No, I appreciate it. Your listeners, they can go to jfeelyforcongress.com. They can see all of my beliefs. They can help us. They can
see. You're a media guy. That's exactly what I was going to say. Where can people find you?
Yeah.
And best of luck this weekend.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Go Blue.
Fight on. And ladies and gentlemen,
Thanks,
please remember this is a podcast about faith, freedom, and free enterprise, the founding principles of our great country. Thanks so much. We'll be back next week. God bless.